Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and hi everyone. Okay, now I'm going to share with you for the part 2, chapter 2, part 2, which is the introduction to the abstract data type and C++ revision. So what is actually construction? I believe you already learned about this one in your PT1 and PT2, right? So we would like to revise again, okay, the same concept. Alright, constructor actually allocates memory for an object and can initialize new instances of a class to particular values, while the destructor destroys an instance of a class when the object's lifetime ends. And for the constant function, constant function known as a function that cannot alter data member of the class. So here we have constructor versus destructor. Okay, again the constructor will allocates the memory, but destructor will deallocates the memory. Constructor can have an arguments, but destructor cannot have arguments. And the constructor overloading is possible but not possible for the destructor. So these are example of syntax for the constructor and destructor. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, constructors create and initialize new instance of a class. Okay, so it will invoke when you declare an instance of the class. Okay, so the same name as the class, the constructor is must have same name as the class. So if let's say our class name is circle, so meaning that our constructor name, okay, must also be circle. Have no return type but not even void. Okay, a class can have several constructors. Okay, so we have a default constructor. Okay, no argument for the default constructor, and the compiler will generate a default a default constructor if you do not define any constructor. So meaning that there's no constructor has been has been declared in your class, so automatically the default constructor will be created. Okay, let's see about the constructor properties. As I mentioned earlier, we do have about 3 constructors. So the first one is default constructor. Okay, you can see here the default constructor is pure. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, it will be automatically created. Okay, and constructor also can have argument. Okay, so meaning that we have argument here. Okay, for example, double initial radius, and can have also the constructor also can have default argument. Okay, so meaning that we initialize value of the argument, okay, in the parameter here. So you can see here that we declare we have a constructor with default argument double initial radius is equal to 10. Okay, let's see the default constructor. Okay, so the implementation of a method qualifies its name with scope resolution operator. Okay, so we can see here this sets data members to initial values. Okay, so this is the default constructor, right? So let's say we declare the instant declaration as sphere unit sphere, right? So there are types of variables in C++, alright? As I mentioned in the previous slide, we are talking about the instance variable. Okay, so basically there are 3 types of variables in C++, which is static variables, instance variables, and also local variables. Okay, what is a static variable? Okay, static int A, for example. So the static is actually declared similarly as instance variable, but the difference is that the static variable are declared using the static keyword. You can see here that the static int, right? Okay, a class outside any method, constructor, or block. Okay, and then for the instance variable, once the statement for the instance variable is actually non-static variables, okay, and are declared in a class outside any method or constructor or a block. Okay, the last one is the local variable. Okay, the local variable is a variable defined within a block or method or a constructor. Okay, it's called a local. Alright, so this example for the constructor with argument. Okay, so sphere is our constructor. Okay, it's called our constructor name. So here we have an argument which is initial radius. Okay, so this is example of constructor with arguments. Okay, so this is how we declare, okay, the instance declaration. Okay, for the instance declaration. Okay, next we have constructor with default argument. Okay, so for the constructor default argument, you can see here the difference of the constructor with argument. We do not, in the constructor argument, we do not assign any value, right, to the argument. Okay, but here for the constructor with default argument, okay, we need to assign a value here. So you can see here that we assign initial radius is equal to 5, right? So there are two methods actually, two methods of to declare the instance of a class. Okay, so the first one we have sphere my sphere. Okay, so this is the for the okay, for the first one is actually the constructor with default argument. Okay, because we assign value 10.1. For the second one, this one is known as the default constructor. Okay, however, when implementing, this is called as an overload constructor. So when implementing the overload constructor, okay, that consists of the default argument. Okay, our default argument is the second instance, sphere my sphere, with default argument. So it's as given here. You can see here that it actually can cause ambiguity error. Okay, because the compiler cannot distinguish whether to invoke the default constructor or the constructor with default argument. Okay, so actually we have to avoid the ambiguity error. So what we can do is that the first one, discard one of the constructor. Okay, we have to discard one of the constructor, or we can change the constructor with default argument. Okay, so for example here, let's say our argument our default argument here, we set it as double initial radius is equal to 5, right? Okay, so maybe we can add another one. Okay, we can make it as maybe int p comma double initial radius is equal to 5, for example. Okay, so it can actually discard, it can actually avoid the ambiguity error. Alright, next we go to the destructors. Okay, which is destroys an instance of an object when the object's lifetime ends. So each class has one destructor, and for many classes you can omit the destructor. So the compiler will generate a destructor if you do not define one. Okay, okay, so we go to the member function implementation. Okay, okay, for the member function implementation here, okay, you can see that we have a function get diameter, right? So the method to call the member function from the main, okay, from the main function or non-member function. Okay, so basically this one is the function whereby we want to get we want to get information from the function that we call. Okay, this is from member function example. Okay, and then we also can have classes as function parameter. Okay, class objects can be passed to another function as parameters. So basically, there are three methods of passing class as parameter to function. Okay, the first one is pass by value, the second one is pass by reference, and the third one is pass by constant reference. For the pass by value, meaning that any change that the function makes to the object, okay, is not reflected in the corresponding actual argument in the function. Okay, so this is example for pass by value, right? So this is our class subject. Okay, this is our private, public. So here we can see here that we have to use the friend function here, okay, to pass the object as parameter. Okay, because this non-member function is try to accessing our private data member. Okay, so this is the function of the change subject just now, right? Okay, so this one is to receive object. So we can see here that access the class member, okay, include the private data member from the sub. Okay, okay, now we go to the pass by reference. Okay, for the pass by reference, any changes that the function makes to the object will change the corresponding actual argument in the calling functions. So we can see here that the function prototype for a function that receive a reference object as parameter. Okay, so you can see here the class name and class object. Okay, so this is example for pass by reference, right? So here we can have the subject and sub, right? Okay, the last one is the constant parameter. Okay, constant parameter is actually a reference parameter, can be declared as constants if we don't want any changes being done to the data in the functions, right? So you must include const here. Okay, so the function prototype for function that receive a reference object as parameter. Okay, so this is how we, in case we want to apply the constant constant parameter. Okay, so but in this case, okay, once we declare the function as constant, we declare the parameter as constant in the function. Okay, so the data member for sub is in this case the data member of for sub is trying to be changed, right? Okay, but error will occur. Okay, this function shows that data member for sub is trying to change. Okay, but error will occur since the parameter constants cannot be modified. Okay, next we have the constant as written value from functions. So these are the syntax for declaring function that return a class object, right? So let's see, here we have this is our function name and this is our parameter. Okay, so syntax to call function that return a class, our object name, and is equal to our function name. Okay, so where object name is an object from the same class, okay, with the type of class written from the function. So this object will be assigned with the value written from function, and the function name is function that return the class, right? Okay, so this is example. Okay, so we can see here that function that return a class object point. Okay, this is our class object, right? We have a functions here called find middle point. Okay, and the function type is a class. Okay, this is the class. All right, so basically here we are trying to create instance of point. Okay, this is the instance of the point, and then we want to return the instance of point. All right, so here is example, okay, statement that call function that return a class. Okay, so this is what, this is our default parameter, right? This is our constructor with argument. This is our default constructor, right? So this one, okay, the point 3 is actually the point in the middle of point 1 and point 2. So this one meaning that we are calling this function, we are calling the find middle point function, okay. So the call function, okay, that return object, so the value return is assigned to the point 3, okay. The return value here, okay, the return middle point value here will be assigned to point 3. Okay, that's all for part 2. See you in part 3. Thank you.